From Calexico to Nunavut, from the Aleutian Islands to Newfoundland, and somewhere in between, this is the Dynasty Pulse. Producer! Fantasy Pulse with bigz and Grindberg and Schultzy on the Fantasy Football Plus and Undroppables networks. We got a good show tonight, Mike. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, we got a returning guest who is coming off a brawl from another guest that we've had on last week. It's awesome. We're gonna get the shrapnel rubble from the mess. We're gonna get Jack, who's here with us today, his opinion back on the Ladd McConkey, Roma Dunze, JSN front, and then we'll talk about some Scott Fishbowl stuff. So, maybe let's get
Scott Fishbowl. We got player 180's. So I was thinking about a couple guys that I was looking at for the Fishbowl, and I was applying my projections to the Dynasty space, and I thought, you know what? I used to not like this guy. Or whatever his value was, and now I've turned around on him. So we're going to be talking about that. We'll get to the Fishbowl stuff too, but let's bring on our guest. You want to do that?
Let's do it.
We got Jack Lucenay in the bit. Whoa! Hey!
Yes.
I come in on a literal 180 for you guys. What's up?
Yeah, it's the 180 show. How you doing, Jack?
I am doing well. I'm surviving. I am going with the flow right now. I'm on about my 6th cup of coffee here, keeping me alive.
Woo! What do they
surviving
call
on coffee and Tums, just like a real grown-up.
What do they call coffee in Canada?
Well, here they call it instant cafe of crap.
Instant. So he's eating. So he's drinking the instant stuff in translation here. I could be the translator. Jack's got quite a more thick Canadian accent than I do. He's got more of a thick French accent. He's more in the in the French area, which I'm going to come and visit him this summer. I'm going to be in the Montreal area come late August. Am I around that area? Are you around that Montreal area there, Jack? Whereabouts in Canada are you?
I'm just a stone's throw from Montreal. I'm about an hour north of there. And it's funny because there's actually all kinds of accents here. If you ask I'm like a unicorn in Canada, because if I'm in Quebec, they'll tell me I have an English accent, but if I go to Ontario, they'll tell me I got a French one. So I kind of live in both worlds that way. But yeah, I'm about 40 minutes north of Montreal.
Well, I might have to come do a day trip up there. You might have to come visit me and show me the ropes. Go for a session or two, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, Montreal is dope.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, it's good to have you back, Jack. And we're gonna bring Schultzy in here too. What's up, Shuanzi?
Hey, how's it going?
So, Jack, have you increased your Ladd McConkey shares recently?
I definitely have. It's funny because we're going to be talking about Scott Fishbowl and how our drafts are going, and I have Ladd McConkey. I made sure of it, but I'm struggling with my team. I feel like my team is very much going to win it all, or we're not going to do a damn thing.
Well, I mean, that's the spirit of the Fishbowl, so you're in good shape.
Yeah, so we're surviving out here, but no, I took all the rookies is kind of my problem. I have Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, and Trey Benson on my team. So and Blake Corum. Let's just throw him in there too.
Okay.
If one of the running backs and the wide receiver and the tight end somehow all work out for me, and we thread that needle, we should be okay.
I'm not doing too bad on rookies. I got me a Drake May, and then I went Will Shipley, Dylan Laube, Malik Washington. to end it. So with a little Trey Lance sprinkled in there, just because but those 4 rookies with possible kick return upside. We got the chat. Albert Maraquin. Hello, everyone. Hello, Albert.
Welcome back,
And
Albert.
Was that you? Or
that was me. That was me.
That was you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that's Bradley.
Sometimes it is. But when I do it on the instant chat, it goes right up as Fantasy Plus Network because we're streaming straight from YouTube. So
I've even called that Bradley before, and it was probably you. So let me look real quick, Mr. Jack, and bring your board up here.
Nice. So Jack, what position were you drafting at?
So I was at 106, which is another thing that I now, like, having gone through it, I sort of regret being at the 106 because it felt like I wasn't brave enough to make the moves I needed to make. Because it's funny because, just by contrast, in Warrior Bowl, this is my first year in Warrior Bowl, the settings are actually kind of similar. There's a lot of the same bonuses. It's super flex. Now, the roster construct isn't the same with the crazy amount of flexes, which is why I was even more bullish on my idea that you needed to really hammer running backs in this draft. But, like, Mahomes fell to me at 106. And even in a nerfed passing league, like, I expect him to get back to, like, Mahomesian numbers with Worthy and Hollywood coming in. So it's like I couldn't pass on him. And then I ended up taking AJB to just lock down my one wide receiver that you need to have in Scott Fishbowl. And then it feels like things got away from me. Like Pacheco and DK Metcalf were solid, but then, I kind of just went really heavy with the rookies. Like I had already mentioned, I have Vlad McConkey and Brock Bowers and Trey Benson and Blake Corum. Oh, but it didn't stop there because when it got to the later rounds, I also took Malik Washington. And guys, I got to tell you, I got a sickness. And the only solution is it's not more Calbo. It's more Roman Wilson. I have Roman Wilson, I think, on every single team that I have drafted. I've got like over 70% in best ball. I've got him in Scott Fish. It's just like there's no way he doesn't do something. And then I've got Jatavian Sanders just to like make sure I have another rookie tight end.
Well, tell me a little bit about that then, because you're a Steelers fan at heart, right, Jack? We know that. And I'm hearing some rumblings from that camp that we're going to see a little bit of Calvin Austin that's going to maybe start in that role over Roman Wilson because he's got that 1 year, of experience. He knows this system a little bit. Do you think that's fluff, or do you think Roman Wilson, because he's so talented and his draft capital is going to come in there and just take over?
Yeah, it's fluff. I can just tell you as a Steelers fan, like, look, we love Calvin Austin. He's not anything blocking anyone from being a viable wide receiver. Like, he's more of a gadget player, especially in that system. Like, I'm sure Arthur Smith will love using him nonsensically. That's kind of his thing. But when you slot in just who is going to be the second target, or I guess you could say the third target if you want to count the Muth, right? There's a very clear path to me. Like, Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, like, these are all just guys. Like, Roman Wilson is a guy. There's a very big difference. He is extremely talented, and just the history of Steelers wide receivers, it's the same reason I was so in on Jordan Love last year. It's like Packers don't miss on quarterback, and Steelers, they produce wide receivers just over and over again. And I'm not even saying that Roman Wilson has to have like a crazy rookie season where you're drafting him. Like, I love him in best ball, and we can kind of touch on this a little bit later. I've been going mad and deep in this whole theory that I have about disparity theory, and the idea of that a wide receiver doesn't actually need to produce that much, especially in a best ball role in terms of their on-field statistics, for it to equate to more fantasy points than the majority of these jabroni running backs that you're drafting in the same range. So because Roman Wilson goes so late in the double-digit rounds, if he pops 800 yards and like 5 to 8 touchdowns, which is pretty modest for a wide receiver. Like he's going to outproduce almost every person around him at ADP and his own ADP.
That's actually pretty gangbusters for a rookie, though, especially not one who's coming in as, like a Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors wide receiver 1 off the bat. Like that's a lofty expectation for.
I think it used to be. Like in 2024, I don't think 700-800 yards is crazy to like stat out over, because they have the extra game now too. You know what I'm saying? Like if that's like 60 yards a game or something like that, it's not a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's like 50, 60 yards a game. It's hard in a format like Scott Fish where I'm going to have to decide when I want to start the guy. That's where it's not sexy to have these kind of guys that are only getting 700-yard seasons. But this is why I've been kind of going crazy, because it's best ball summer out here. And for all the best ball drafts that I've been doing, especially the ones that have the cumulative scoring across the season, I'm like, this is just a math problem, basically. And if you look at the way that the wide receivers in that range produce, not just according to the running backs that are matching at the ADP, but also just across the average of their own position. Like those wide receivers, like having that super mediocre, like Darius Slayton was a lot closer to CeeDee Lamb than Jaleel McLaughlin was to CMC.
Yeah.
That gap and that disparity was massive on the running back side compared to the wide receivers. And when you talk about the mean, like just the average wide receiver, now it's like a difference of like, oh, it might be 50 points for the wide receiver. Like a jabroni, like Josh Reynolds is out here coming within 50 points of the mean. Whereas like the running backs like are off a cliff. Like they're under 100 fantasy points. They're not even close to the mean.
Right. Yeah. And that's opportunity share. You'll be pleased to know that you are not the earliest drafter of Malik Washington. Just the second. He was taken at the 1804 by Paco GV.
Paco.
And then you got him in the 1806. And then I am, where did I go? 25, 26, 27th latest. So
I'm super bullish on Malik though, because you can't plan on injury, but it's like, yes, he has potential to like maybe do some stuff in the return game, maybe as a third wide receiver, but it's like, God forbid anything happens to Waddle or Tyreek. Malik Washington in that system, and with how much Mike McDaniel specifically was targeting him on draft day and really bugging the GM of like, we need to draft this guy, I could just see him having some nice games.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I agree.
Mike McDaniel isn't going to slow down passing either, just because someone's hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the guys they were trying to replace with last season, like it was kind of Jags. Like it was, I'm forgetting the name of the guy, but it's like the kind of guys that have been journeymen in the league for like 4 or 5 years. They drafted not just Malik but Taj Washington too. Mm-hmm. So they drafted a couple guys because they kind of saw what happened when, and it's not even necessarily that they miss a season. It's that Waddle and Hill are both subject and viable to missing a couple games here and there.
Or a quarter here or a quarter there, whatever it is, like bigz pointed it out a couple of weeks ago on one of our shows as, got to be cautious with a guy like Tyreek Hill with those ankles. We've seen him coming off the field for like a quarter at a time. And like you mentioned, they need to have guys that can fill in for there. And I like Malik Washington as one of those, plug and play kind of guys that, if he can jump in and get, a Waddle roll, if one of those two guys get out, that's huge targets. That's a huge upside in scoring offense. So yeah, I'm on with you on that one. Now bigz, question for you, my friend. You did a live draft this weekend. Now you had about a week's worth of intel, but you were under the gun. Now, how did you feel that week of preparation helped you? You were doing a ton of mock drafts, especially on the Pulse here. When you were in a situation where you were, probably some peer pressure happening around you, you're in a good mood, you're having a lot of fun. Did you think that, your preparation was, yeah, exactly. Did that help you? Did you think you did well while you were there? What were some misses, some hits? Did you think that, what were some of the biggest surprises for you come draft day at the live
Well, I
draft?
tell you, Mike, during the mock drafts, looking at ADPs and kind of how I wanted to approach the draft, I had a very specific plan, and you guys know this. I wanted to start with CD Lamb and then hit Dak around the next in round 2. CD went off the board at the 104. I was drafting from the 107, and then I'm in a room with it was 2 divisions drafting, 24 people. There are 23 49ers fans in the building. And McCaffrey was just falling down the board. And I was like, I might get McCaffrey. Well, no.
Oh my God.
Niner fan drafting in the 6th spot took him. So I was kind of like, well, what do I want to do here?
Yeah.
And we were doing a sticker thing. So you grab the sticker of the person and put it up on the board. And I was debating between Breece Hall and Anthony Richardson. And ultimately, I went with Anthony Richardson for the upside. I've been pretty confident about my running back choices later in the rounds, and that seemed to play out. So led off with Richardson, and then as everything kind of came back around, I was thinking in my head, I want to focus on targets, and Amon-Ra St. Brown was sitting there at the 206. So I had to hit that real quick, and then it came back around on the 3, and Evan Ingram is a tight end target monster. Correlated him in the 4th with Trevor Lawrence, and then I hit boom, 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 3 running backs in a row: Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, and Zamir White. All 3 of whom are pretty isolated. They're pretty alone in their backfields. They're going to get the majority of all the work on their teams. Wanted to keep going with tight end, so I grabbed Hawkinson because he's going to be a late play towards the season. And then I had to hit wide receiver again. I went Deontay for the targets, Mims for the kick return and punt return addition, and then Christian Watson for the upside. And Watson kind of fits the theme of this. After his rookie season, he had a lot of deep ball analytics that didn't speak to him being able to repeat his touchdown production. And then sure enough, in his 2nd year, he was hurt and we couldn't cash in on his promise. And so I kind of, going into 2023, I was like pretty avoidant of him. And then for some reason, as I was walking up to grab my sticker, I thought, you know what? I don't own him anywhere. Let me just give him a shot, because what if, right? And then Drake May rushing upside, Josh Downs, punt return, kick return, Demario Douglas, targets, Trey Tucker, kick return. Colby Parkinson could be a play at tight end. We had Andrew Cooper talking about it. The Rams like him. They went out and they signed him away from Seattle. And Tyler Higbee is not starting the season. He's starting the season on PUP. So Colby Parkinson's going to have a pretty quick opportunity. Roshan Johnson, maybe, Jelani Woods. And then to finish out the last 4 picks, I went Will Shipley and Dylan Laube for their punt return and kick return potential. Trey Lance. I was trying to think of a 4th quarterback because I had decided at some point to take a 4th quarterback. And so I was trying to decide who I wanted from Marcus Mariota, Sam Howell, Michael Penix, Trey Lance, just guys who are like handcuffs essentially. And Trey Lance is the one that I landed on just because of his rushing upside. If for some reason Dak gets hurt and Trey Lance gets out there, all he needs to do is rush for 1,000 yards and I'm good. And then Malik Washington to figure it out. Jack and I, Malik Washington brothers. The first 11 rounds that we did there, it felt like stealing.
All right. So, Jack, I saw when bigz was running through his list, there was one player that you got. We got a good reaction from your face from, and I was watching it intensely, and that was Evan Ingram. Now, was that a thing like you're on the Evan Ingram train? Because you got three truthers here sitting, waiting to put our grips in you if you're gonna, speak his name in vain. But what's your opinion on Evan Ingram? Was that just a one-off thing? Did you get a text message? Was it a funny picture that came up on your phone, or what?
I was reacting, but not to what you think I was reacting to. So I loved the Evan Ingram pick, right? When he said Evan Ingram, it reminded me of basically like what went wrong in my Scott Fishbowl, right? And it was that I was not brave enough. And it's funny because I feel like I'm making up for it in Warrior Bowl, because now I'm doing the thing in Warrior Bowl from the 111 that I should have done from 106 in Scott Fish. But it felt like reaching in Scott Fish, right? And so let me lay it out for you. This is where it all went wrong for me. It was
good.
Right away off the bat, when I took Patrick Mahomes, I should have actually taken Bijan Robinson. That was the first faux pas, right? Coming back around, AJ Brown, that's locked in. That was never a question. I have no qualms, issues with that. Now coming back around, I thought there would be a quarterback run. I took the guy I wanted, which was Tua. I feel like with the addition of Malik Washington and Taj Washington and the addition of Jalen Wright in the backfield, I feel like Tua, and also I don't think Mostert's going out there getting 18 rushing touchdowns again. I think some of those will convert into passing touchdowns. I think he cracked 30-plus touchdowns this year and repeats the yardage, basically. So I think he could be top 5. So I took Tua, but then I was like, as soon as I did it, there was a tight end run, and it was Manders, Evan Ingram, and Kyle Pitts went off the board immediately after, and I was like, shit. I'm 3 rounds in, and I hate my draft, and I feel like I never quite got rid of that feeling. And so that's why when he said Evan Ingram, I had like a pained expression, because I was between Tua, Evan Ingram, and Pitts. And it's funny because Pitts might come up if we have time later, but and so like I said, in Warrior Bowl now, I feel like I'm doing the opposite, because in Warrior Bowl I'm crushing it. My first 4 picks right now: Bijan, Amon-Ra, Trey McBride, and I just took Kyle Pitts. So
that's sick. I really like that a lot, actually. That's pretty solid. And if it's similar scoring, I'm not in the Warrior Bowl, but I got into the Battle of the Sexes, and it's pretty tight. I felt like I was telling bigz earlier. I was like, man, this draft is a ton harder than the Fishbowl was, because I think just maybe he mentioned maybe there's some savvier players because of the talent pool is a little bit higher. There's less amateurs within these other charity events. But what's your take on this then, Jack?
I was about to say, I think for Scott Fishbowl specifically, it depends what division you land in, because that was the other thing I was going to say. He talked about Colby Parkinson. The whole reason I drafted Malik Washington ahead of ADP was because I got sniped on Parkinson literally the pick before at 18-6. And that same guy sniped me like 4 times during the draft. Like the one I remember swearing, like, when you have the pick that goes right in front of yours and you swear out loud? James Cook. I'm so in on James Cook this year. He took him right before me. Also, Kyron Williams was slipping, and I thought, there's no way Kyron makes it to me at 4-6 here. No, because that guy took him at 4-5. So just the whole draft, like, dude was killing me. And then on the other side of me, I had Chris B. Battistill. So it wasn't like it was any easier coming the other way. So I was just I put out the meme of the mask at the end of the movie where he gets shot up and then he's drinking the orange juice and it just starts coming out of his body and all the bullet holes. That was me after drafting in Joker Division Scott Fish. And it was
That's awesome.
It wasn't like it was just me. Like I swear, like the the memes, everybody was active. Our draft is over. It went pretty quickly, to be honest. Like, Joker division was on top of things. I've been joking that like the whole reason Jeff Bell actually left wasn't so he could do a live draft. It's because he didn't want to compete with us.
Yeah,
well, and that's fair.
Shout out to our guest, Ginger Beard Man Dixicles. So I was kind of looking it over, and when I drafted Drake May, that was in the 12th round. Last year, I was able to grab Goff like in the 11th, something like that. But the quarterbacks that were drafted after May are Bo Nix, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Sam Darnold, Jacoby Brissett. There was nobody left. All of the quarterbacks went in the first like 10 rounds. And that really surprised me. That was one thing coming out of the mocks that I was not prepared for, was how fucking quick those quarterbacks were going to fly. I mean, I don't hate it because I got too early enough. And May was, kind of like my third QB safety valve. So I was fine with that. And it also allowed me to hit 6 wide receivers out of 7 rounds. So I went tight end, then 3 wide receivers, quarterback, 3 wide receivers, and another tight end. So the way that the roster is constructed, I'm like pretty okay with that. But I was thinking I was at least going to get like a Bryce Young level, like by that point. You know what I mean? No Derek Carr, no Bryce Young, no Russell Wilson, like nothing. Those guys were all like 12th, 13th, 14th rounds in the mock drafts. So I don't know if that was just my mock draft or my.
That was
mine was actually. I think mine was the opposite, honestly, like, because I showed you a screenshot of mine in that same round, Biggs, and I think there was about 5 quarterbacks that were still available in my draft, like Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, and there was a couple others that were kind of floating around that range that were still kind of available. But as soon as that loop came around and I took Daniel Jones, they all went within those next 5 picks. So it's very relative, I think, and a matter of, when these guys are going to pop off, and you just got to be the first person on those runs or the last person on them, because you don't want to be in the middle of them because you're not getting the value at that stage. Now, Schultzy, you've been pretty quiet. I want to hear a little bit about your draft, and some of you mentioned one big miss I think you had in the middle stage. Why was that a miss for you? And in retrospect, what was it, and how would you have done that differently?
Okay, I had one major oversight in my draft, but first I'm going to take a hot second here. Got my good buddy Sam. I'm giving a shout out to. He may be watching tonight. I know he subscribes to the channel. He has been one of my best friends since we were like 6 years old. Having open heart surgery tomorrow for the second time. He's got a PIGS valve, and now he's gonna have some like carbon fiber. I don't know, some serious shit going on. Shout out to Sam. I love you, man. 9 hours under the knife tomorrow. You got this.
Yeah, we're thinking of you, man. Totally.
But so I started off. I nailed my plan. My plan going in, I had the 101. I wanted Josh Allen. I wanted to stack him with Kincaid, and then I wanted to hit Ingram and Lawrence. Nailed it. I was super pumped about it. One thing I had a laugh about is all 4 of those guys are on bye week 12, which I don't really care. It's 1 week. Like, I'm never going to change my draft strategy for bye weeks because it's 1 week. Like, I'm not, I'm just not doing that.
Of course.
However, I get later in the draft and I'm like, okay, QB3. Like, it's important for me to grab a QB3 because both mine have the same bye week. And being at the 101, I get the turn. So I'm sitting 22 picks in between my turns. And we got nailed with a quarterback run. And I panicked. And it was Derek Carr. I want to say Derek Carr, Bo Nix, and Gardner and Aiden were the only ones left who even had a shot at starting. And I panicked and I just took Derek Carr because I was like, Derek Carr's miles beyond Bo Nix and Gardner and Aiden.
Yeah.
And then after I did it, I went, oh shit, he's week 12. so now my top 3 QBs are all week 12 buys. My second to last pick, I just took Flacco. I made sure to check he's not week 12, but for me it was like, which of these guys, I don't even care about upside. It was all about which of these dudes left has the best shot of taking snaps by week 12. And for me, I just took the shot at Joe Flacco because he's behind Anthony Richardson.
You know, throw some trade offers out there.
You can't trade in Scott Fishbowl.
I was going to say, I didn't think I could.
But I will say something that'll comfort you is that last year, something like a ridiculous number, like 60 quarterbacks started in the NFL, and there's only like 32 teams. By the end of the season, I was actively starting Nick Mullins for at least like 3-4 weeks in a row. People were winning with Easton Stick. So I don't actually think it matters if you drafted your third quarterback or not, as long as you're making sure that you pick one up by about week 8.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm really I'm thrilled with Derek Carr as far as like if Allen or Trevor go down, like I'm totally cool with having Derek Carr as a fill-in. But yeah, for week 12, and I think Biggs and I were talking one time off show that week 12 is the first week of the playoffs. So I was like, man, if I make it, I'm really uphill here.
and so I said, I was like, well, look at the bright side. You won't be in the playoffs anyway. So, so one of the things that we were doing, so of course, you loyal watchers know we were smashing the shit out of mock drafts. On top of that, there's the Fantasy Life app or website, whatever. You can track ADP and all that stuff for those of you who are still in the fishbowl. And then Mike was like pushing me to use Dynasty Data Lab, available at dynastydatalab.com. And so with my draft finished, I just wanted to look this over real quick. And so looking over the rosters, we have a couple people, 877 value, 875 value. And I just kept scrolling to try and find mine. And Dynasty Data Lab has me in 12th. The highest ADP differential and the lowest total value. Thanks, Mike. I didn't need to know that.
No, because no. That value there wasn't to tell you how your team was, but it was telling you how these guys were coming around. So in reality, ADP on Sleeper was just, it's not there. It's not accurate. And at least you have an accurate ADP, a current ADP on where these guys were going. So if you knew that Wan'Dale Robinson is going two rounds down and you think you need him on your lineup, you're reaching for him. So those are the things that you want to do, because at the end of the draft, we're just picking guys that are going to be, random crapshoots. So why not reach for your guys ahead of it,
right,
and get them on your lineup? So that is no relative to what it is. It offered you a really good sense of where ADP is at, and then knowing where the guy is going to be coming up on the board. Because it's AI, man. It's not perfect. It's imperfect, actually, but it's important to to see where you're at. And I think it was a super valuable tool, because as the draft was going on, I knew a relative score of where guys were going, where their ADP was at, and then where the value is. But on the flip side, when you're in a draft as slow as mine, we have people that are deliberately going right to the end of the queue just so ADP can kind of catch up, and they're doing that. So what's your guys' thought on that? Or a guy timed out twice in my fishbowl, and then 2 minutes later logs on and is like, sorry guys, I timed out, but I'm on it now, don't worry. It's etiquette, it's these things, but it's also like, preservation. You're looking at like catching up to ADP, that kind of stuff. It's a savvy move if you think about it, but it's kind of annoying for the rest of you that, do your homework and know what's actually happening.
Crazy. That's amateur hour stuff right there to me.
I got
Sorry, Jack.
someone actually hit me up with a question for the worst interview. So I'll give you guys a little sneak preview. Would you rather be in a league with the guy that takes the full 8 hours every time when he's on the slow draft, or the car salesman that sends you the horrible trades all year?
The car salesman for sure, because you at least it's comedy. It's not annoying. Because at one point you could just say like, I send those screenshots to people.
You ever actually try to get into the negotiation with that guy? It is mind numbing. Like, I literally won't even talk to that guy if I'm not having like a good mental health day. I'm serious. I'm like, bro, I can't even begin to entertain the minutia of talking to you about the ridiculous player evaluations and you sending me your absolute waiver poop and being like, oh, but this is worth Tyreek Hill.
I love
My
it.
favorite is the sends you 5 players whose season's total points add up to Tyreek Hill's points. And it's like, well, the points are the same.
Yeah. Oh, don't you need depth, though, on your team? Don't you just love depth? Yeah, that's what wins championships, guys, is depth.
Yes. So anyway, Dynasty Data Labs hates my team. That's okay, because the people over at Spike Week, when they did their team evaluation last year, I was not supposed to do very well, and I made the playoffs. So maybe I know a little bit more than the computers do. Huh?
Yeah.
No,
you do know more.
Not,
you know what? Actually, that tool helped me last year quite a bit. I didn't have friends like you with strong minds to bounce things off of when you're not really connected with the fantasy industry, as I wasn't about a year ago. So I was kind of on my own, and that really helped me out. Navigate through ADPs and stuff like that. And I ended up finishing, in the top 275 of the Fishbowl. It was a tool that helped me, and I think it's going to help me again this year, with the help of the three of you, because I've bounced some ideas off of especially bigz and Schultzy over the last week or so, because my draft is very slow, and I've been very fortuitous to be able to get some of these guys that we've talked about, and where they've gotten them 2 rounds earlier. So it's crazy.
There's one, Schultzy, fortuitous.
I'm all about. You guys have to get the Canadian encyclopedias down low here, because I make up a word every show, Jack, and they're making a tally now, and they're gonna have their own.
I love it. It's true. I think we as Canadians do have like an expansive vocabulary, because we'll just pull out some shit like fortuitous on you.
That's what because it is. It's an expansive vocabulary.
No, it's a hybrid between French and English, because we literally in school are learning 2 languages at the same time and have to mind meld them into one. And it was part of my upbringing.
Definitely a real thing. That I can definitely confirm.
Yeah, exactly. So we were fortuitous to be able to learn 2 languages in school growing up. So that was why our vocabulary is a little bit more broad.
Yeah, that's sehr gut, Mike, which is German for très bien, which is French for pretty good.
All right, guys.
Yeah, let's get this show on the road,
Yeah, let's do these 180s, okay? Let's get into at least one of our 180s. We're talking about players that completely changed your mind over the last year. It could have been in this offseason. It could have been a guy you had to take on headed into 2023. I've got some big misses in 2023 that I'm willing to own up. I'm sure we all do. But let's get into them. Do you want me to start with my number?
Can we get a big spin from you?
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Hey, Jack, so who's your first 180 that you've changed tack on?
No, you got to put it backwards first.
There you go.
180.
All right, we're looking at 180s, Jack. Who's your first 180? Who's a guy that you were like, either really high on or really low on, and now have completely changed your mind? It could go either way of the spectrum.
It's funny because, look, I kind of had it as a bonus, but I'm just gonna say it's the whole team, because my entire perception of this offense has flipped 180 from how I viewed it last season. And that offense is the Atlanta Falcons. And it's primarily about Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. Okay.
There you go.
The reason I bring it up is multi-layered. So to start with, on my show last year, in our first year, on our first show basically ever, I said Bijan Robinson would be a bust at ADP if you were drafting him in the first. Because last year people were drafting him where they should be drafting him this year, which is so funny that it's flipped. But it's like, no, last year you should have tempered a little at least. But now it feels like that's what people are doing this. No, it's totally reversed. So last year he was being drafted like in Dynasty. Some people were already drafting him ahead of CMC, which I was like, that's crazy. And then in redraft, it was like right after CMC. So people were very in on Bijan. And it was like, he's going to bust at that ADP because he's in his rookie season. He would have to have like an Eric Dickerson rookie season to outproduce the ADP that you're drafting him at. And Kyle Pitts, I was like, he does not fit Arthur Smith's offense and just never will. It is a square peg in a round hole. Arthur Smith runs the highest percentage of 2 tight end sets in the NFL. Very much blocking schemes set for heavy run sets. That's why Jonnu Smith worked so well in that offense. And Kyle Pitts, even though, yes, it was also related to the injury and the bad quarterback play, just kind of never really fit in with what Arthur Smith wanted, which was a blocking tight end that can also catch, as opposed to a generational tight end that could basically also almost play wide receiver.
Big slot.
So Pitts, to me, was always capped, and he was never going to really hit the way people wanted him to as long as Arthur Smith was in town. And so now it's not just that Arthur Smith left. It's who's come in. I am enamored with this 3/4 of the Rams coaching staff that they brought over, led by Raheem Morris. But it's also like the former quarterback coach, I think, is the OC. Like literally, like it's like they took all McVay's assistants and just brought them over to Atlanta. They're like, y'all handle this now, which I love. All the coach speak that you want to hear is already headed in the right direction for Bijan Robinson. We're going to use him in the CMC role. We're going to use him like the generational talent that he is. And they're saying the same thing about Kyle Pitts, that they're going to move Kyle Pitts around in and out of off the line so that he's not always having to be on the line as a tight end. He may bump out into the slot in some formations or even bump out as a second wide receiver. So just the way that they're going to be able to utilize the players night and day compared to what Arthur Smith was doing. So you take all of those things, and then this is the whole rabbit hole that I've fallen down with the running back disparity. And this is especially true in leagues like Scott Fishbowl, where the passing in the first downs make players like CMC so far and away like a game breaker that it is actually insane. So if you look at what he did last season, Christian McCaffrey scored 476 fantasy points in Scott Fish.
That's
Do you
it.
know how much X guy scored? Do you know how much was second place? It was Breece Hall with 337.
I was going to say 320.
Yeah. 476 versus 337. So when I look at who are the players in the NFL that have the potential this season to have a similar type of season to what CMC did last year and therefore be a potential game breaker in this format, there's really only like 2 names that come to mind, and it's Bijan 1 and it's Breece Hall 2.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Malik Washington.
Yeah, I can hear the argument for both of those guys. Like, I really love Jahmyr Gibbs, and if it wasn't for David Montgomery, I could see that also, but Montgomery caps it. But with Breece Hall and with Bijan, it's like Tyler Algier and Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. Those are all very nice backups. They pale in comparison to the starters in front of them. They're not threatening Bijan and Breece. So it's like when I'm looking for if they're the guy that's going to most closely replicate CMC, those are really the only two that are viable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sold on both of them, and we've talked about it on lots of shows. Kyle Pitts is and I was kind of mad about Bijan last year more than I didn't want to buy him at his value. But I was very pissed off because I had Tyler Algier shares, and the last thing I needed Atlanta to do was draft Bijan Robinson, and look how it worked out. But big resurgent year from Kyle Pitts, big resurgent year from Drake London. Bijan had one of the things that was keeping him from hitting his potential performance ceiling last year was the number of uncatchable targets. If he can get closer to Breece Hall and his number of receptions, he's right there. And I mean, it's just like it'll be an absolute game changer.
And they're talking about Breece Hall not even being, like Aaron Rodgers does check down, but he doesn't check down at the rate that like a Zach Wilson would have. So I'm not expecting Breece Hall to have as many receptions in this offense. I think he's going to have a lot more scoring opportunities, but I just don't think the checkdowns are going to be there. And I think Bijan Robinson, Kirk Cousins, we all know he likes to check down as well. So I just think that he's positioned. If there's anybody in 2024 that could probably do CMC out of that number one position, I would say it is Bijan with the situation. Raheem Morris, you nailed that on the head there, Jack, in my opinion. I just think there's a lot of variables there. Big time switches in Atlanta for sure.
Now, let's not forget that the New York Jets offense is UC Davis legend Nathaniel Hackett's brainchild, and it's not as much about checkdowns as actual running back targets. And I think Breece is going to be okay, even if Rodgers isn't a checkdown guy.
So it's funny because the Jets offense only works with Aaron Rodgers because of Nathaniel Hackett. Because like I watched Hard Knocks, and literally like none of the players relate to Nathaniel Hackett or even really understand his sense of humor or his style of community. Like literally, like there's like multiple scenes of him trying to joke with the players, and the players are looking at him like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? And the only real person who like kind of gets it is Aaron Rodgers. Will like go back and forth with him. And there's one scene in particular that sticks out in my mind where Nathaniel Hackett says a bunch of gobbledygook, and Zach Wilson is standing there and has no idea what he said. He looks at Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers basically translates, and then Zach Wilson goes, oh, okay. And then, so the whole thing of like when Aaron Rodgers got hurt, I was like, I don't understand how he didn't participate more as like a coaching figure, at least as a translator between Nathaniel Hackett and the rest of the team. But if he is the quarterback for the season, which is a big if still, I think, it's going to be better. And even though he's not really a check down guy, like Breece playing a full healthy season, even if he has a little bit less in the receiving work, I expect it to be more on the rushing side. That's why I'm like, and he's basically got it to himself, which is to have that crazy elite talent and the role pretty much to yourself. Like I said, the only two guys I see that way are Breece and Bijan, but I have Bijan ahead of Breece.
Gotcha. Now, you want to get some controversy here, Bigz? You want to lick your chops here a bit? Do you want to have some satisfaction on me taking a big L here, or do you want to get some progression? Do you want to see growth in a friend?
I'm just gonna go ahead and bask I'm gonna bask.
All right.
It's no secret that last year, Mike and I had a couple disagreements, and 180-degree turn on two of those. He's coming around, folks.
All right, so my first one here, and hopefully we don't have to get into all of them because the list could be longer than we expect here, but I'm going to talk about George Pickens and why I've changed my mind about him in 2024. Initially, I had my doubts about George Pickens. In 2023, I was concerned about his consistency and how he'd fit in the Steelers' offensive plans. Despite Kenny Pickett being effective when targeting him, Pickens' limited involvement with only 15% target share. Several games where he didn't even catch many passes were red flags for me. He struggled to get open and run diverse routes, led to disappointing performances against both zone and man coverage in 2022. But the Steelers also were run heavy. Matt Canada, just 569 pass attempts in 2022, made me question if Pickens could even thrive in such a setup. Additionally, we know that Deontay Johnson had a hefty target share. He was running 27%, so I just didn't see it fitting well for him. Matt Canada left. Deontay Johnson got injured, so a lot of things happened and a lot of things went in George Pickens' way, and that changed my mind. I saw a lot of things in George Pickens that I didn't see initially. So now headed into 2024, things have completely changed. Deontay Johnson no longer with the Steelers, leaving behind 87 targets from 2023. Pickens now has a clear path to step up as the primary receiver. His knack for catching deep targets fits perfectly with Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields, depending on who's going to be starting. But obviously Wilson has that upper hand. Even with inconsistent quarterback play last season, he still managed 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. It showed he could capitalize on his chances despite being undervalued with a current ADP of wide receiver 33. I think he's set to, really, really set that world on fire here. I have him as a top 14 wide receiver in 2024, meaning he could be a top 12 guy headed into 2025. From skeptic to believer, George Pickens' transformation into Pittsburgh's top receiver in 2024 has sold me. Deontay's gone. Pickens is poised to shine with Russell Wilson. His knack for big plays, proven production, make him a must-have in fantasy football. I'm saying that loud and clear here, boys. What do you think about that?
I don't need to say anything. I'm just going to let Mr. Steelers fan take his...
The only thing that really makes me nervous about this whole shebang-a-bang, this whole rigmarole, is Arthur Smith at the helm of our offense after what we had to go through with Matt Canada.
Yeah.
I think it's going to work this time, but it's funny because that's what when I said that I saw the whole Atlanta situation flip this year, it's that I was still in on Drake London last year, even with the quarterback and Arthur Smith. I was like, I see, because of his body size, I saw him as like an AJB light. But this year, it's like, oh well, because of the coaching staff and Kirk O'Chains, let's just go ahead and draft him in the second round. And I'm like, I would rather wait and have Michael Pittman or Amari Cooper or like multiple other guys that I feel like are going to produce the exact same thing. So it's Drake London I'm a little nervous about, and because of what happened to Drake London last year, I gotta say I'm a little nervous about George Pickens. But there's just nobody else. There's literally nobody. Like, it's Roman. Well, I feel like as far as like if you just want to go by talent, it's George Pickens, Roman Wilson, and then Calvin Austin and everybody else. Like the other guys, like Van Jefferson and. I can't remember like the 5th and 6th, but they're like absolute like Jags, like have been around the league, journeyman style wide receivers. Like it's not even really.
Breakout is coming.
I'm going to start a rabbit hole here then, because there has been a lot of trade talks happening around Brandon Ayuk and the Steelers.
Oh, if that happens, that blows everything up.
that blows everything up big time. I think that's actually very good for Brandon Ayuk. I mean for George Pickens as well. I think that opens things up. You don't think that's good?
No.
It's the same difference. It's
one of those things of fantasy wish casting where it's like you think because you view the situation like a fantasy manager, you're like, oh yeah, just drop Brandon Ayuk in, and now you've got a number one, and you got George Pickens on the outside, and you got the quarterback, and Arthur Smith will not support that. I'm telling you, if Brandon Ayuk goes there, the team will do well. As a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I will be ecstatic for Brandon Ayuk to land on our team. As a fantasy manager, I ain't touching it. It's making me sick. Oh my God, no.
I'm way off on Ayuk.
Like Brandon Ayuk, I feel like comes down. George Pickens comes down. Roman Wilson comes down. Like, everybody takes a hit. The Muth,
no.
Everybody.
No one takes a hit. Like, well, the Muth will. Like Pickens, I don't think takes a hit. I think he still increases off of last year. Deontay Johnson was a major target earner in that offense, and he still produced last year, even though Deontay was injured. I think that's the biggest hit there is Brandon Ayuk's overall outlook. That would be the biggest one.
More of what Pickens does though than what Deontay does. Like Deontay and Pickens are two very different style of wide receivers. So it's like they can coexist together. That's why I'm so in on Roman Wilson. I actually see Roman Wilson coming into that Deontay Johnson role, not maybe right away, but over time, and especially by the end of the year. Whereas like that's not Brandon Ayuk's. Brandon Ayuk does what George Pickens does basically, but better. So it's what ends up happening is, and I'm very familiar with the Steelers playbook because even though the offensive coordinator might change, Mike Tomlin doesn't change, and for the most part, the Steelers, the way that they run their playbook, it's like maybe they get Brandon Ayuk to do like the Antonio Brown role, where they're moving him in and out of the X and the slot, and they're having, George Pickens exclusively out wide as the wide receiver too, and like that Mike Wallace role. But again, it's like I don't see all of that coexisting with Russell Wilson, and then if anything happens to Russell Wilson, now you're going to Justin Fields, and now you're just completely off a cliff in terms of your passing game. And the fact that we have to rely on Arthur Smith as a wizard to run this whole thing with Cordero Patterson sneaking around in the building, ready to steal touches for no reason. Like I'm very hesitant to be in on Arthur Smith entirely is the thing. I think he just makes me so nervous that again, and then it's just like I don't see like how.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna defend Arthur Smith a little bit. I'm gonna have some defense here because Arthur Smith as a head coach, yeah, he was a train wreck. But if we rewind back to his days with the Titans, he made AJ Brown pretty relevant. In a run heavy offense, and we know that they pounded the rock quite a bit there in Tennessee. So we got to think that he did well for Ryan Tannehill. I think he's going to do okay with Russell Wilson in that offense. He's not having that head coaching opportunity, so I just think that he's more diverse in that when he can just concentrate on one scheme. Hopefully. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of some optimism here with that situation and Arthur Smith. What's that?
Who was the second wide receiver in the Titans offense?
Well, exactly. That was Corey Davis.
Guy.
Corey Davis, and he had a 1,000-yard season, I think. Yeah, no, fair enough.
AJ Brown barely cracked 1,000 that year. Corey Davis had like 800 yards. So this is why I'm saying, like, we are overestimating like what Arthur Smith even did back when he was offensive coordinator with the Titans. This is why I'm in on.
He doesn't have he doesn't have a Bijan, and he doesn't have a Derrick Henry in
Najee Harris. Najee Harris is his Derrick Henry.
Najee Harris is not Derrick Henry.
No, but
It's
he
But
plays
he's
that.
the
He
same
will
size.
play
He
that.
plays the same way. He plays that role.
Yeah, I mean, but the Steelers run the ball regardless.
Carries this year.
He was going to have it regardless of who was going to be the head coach, right?
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying. So it's like I don't see Russell Wilson passing for 4,000 yards. So if you're talking about dividing, 3,000, 3,500 yards in this passing offense, like you're not going to have multiple 1,000-yard wide receivers. So if Brandon Ayuk comes to town, then George Pickens is no longer the A.J. Brown figure. He is the second guy. He is Corey Davis. And I don't want Corey Davis. I want A.J. Brown. So if Brandon Ayuk is there, I might take Brandon Ayuk if his value drops enough. But then I also know in my head that, to me, Brandon Ayuk's ceiling is like 1,007. So I'm not going to overdraft him in the second round.
Well, maybe that's my thing.
In the fourth.
Maybe I'm just higher on Pickens than I am on Ayuk, and I think that Pickens would probably do better in that offense.
Better than Pickens, just all across the board in every facet of like being a wide receiver.
The attitude, there's things that might keep him off the field too. I mean,
their attitude.
What's that?
Pickens is a diva.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, he is.
That's what I'm saying. Literally every possible box you can tick is in favor of Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, so in that situation.
And it's funny because I made the joke the other day too. Brandon Ayuk's being slotted right now to 27 different teams around the NFL, and it's because he's that good. It's because he is basically a number one wide receiver, and it's crazy. It's just that San Francisco is so rich that in assets that like they have a number one wide receiver that they might not be able to keep because they have other number one wide receivers.
And they have to pay one of them.
Yeah, and because they have to pay CMC, who is their actual number one wide receiver. Yeah.
I'm optimistic. I don't think that George Pickens takes a monster hit there. Like, I mean, like he's already.
As long as that doesn't go there.
Yeah. It does decrease his value. You're right on that one for sure. It would definitely decrease his value. I think the biggest hit there would be Ayuk's value because he's going to from an offense that was, I think Ayuk, where he goes, unless he goes to the Bills, I think his value goes down because he's going to be in a less prolific offense with less touches to go around, probably a worse quarterback. I think the Bills is honestly the only place where his value could even increase at all, if not go down.
I think that's the most obvious one, and I agree with you and that's one where it's like now you're raising all ships because low key I have Josh Allen not as my quarterback one. If this offense goes into the season as it currently stands, if they add Brandon Ayuk, that will completely flip my rankings back to where Allen will go back to number one.
Yeah.
I don't have him
bigz.
Like way down, but he's not my number one with no number one wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's fair. It is. Bigz, what do you got for your 180? Do you want to get into yours before we cut her down for our next meeting?
Well, I just want to talk about Josh Allen real quick, and the impetus for this idea was guys that I've been out on mostly in Dynasty, but I was made to rethink because of the fishbowl, and actually I don't want to talk about Josh Allen. I'm going to talk about Rashid Shaheed. So Rashid Shaheed is somebody that I had a lot of owning interest in 2023, and I was kind of pleased with what I saw from him, but not somebody that I would, expect to do a whole lot. He is kind of what he was last year. He is what he is. And then I started getting into the fishbowl stuff, and I pushed back because his value shot so high because of the kick and punt return potential. And so I started putting him at arm's length. And then I was going back through one of my rosters, and I was looking at Shaheed, and I kind of started clicking around on some stuff. And all of a sudden it hit me. I am a huge third-year breakout guy. It's one of the reasons I'm so high on Pickens this year. It's one of the reasons I can't quit Treylon Burks. a lot of times I talk on many shows about how it's not even just third year breakouts. There are guys that turn into Hall of Famers and had shit first 4 and 5 years. But this is Rashid Shaheed's third year in the NFL. This is a time for him to completely explode. And if Derek Carr is fully healthy and they're in a Clint Kubiak offense, which definitely supports an Ayuk and a Debo, along with a McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, anybody, Condre Miller playing the Elijah Mitchell role, Juwan Johnson as the George Kittle. I mean, there is a path for Rashid Shaheed to replicate kind of a Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Ayuk, Debo kind of partnership. And it's not completely out of the question, especially with Kubiak coming in. As long as they helped out their own offensive line, they give Derek Carr enough time that he's not constantly checking down. He's one of the check down leaders. I think Rashid Shaheed could emerge this year as a really, really viable option. And so I've taken he's spinning me around. I loved his deep threat potential last year and took a chance on him for his spike week potential and stuff moving into the playoffs. And this year I was out on him as an everyday guy, but looking a little bit deeper, there's a possibility he could be an everyday guy.
I like this because the return factor is being super overrated right now in Scott Fish, and it is crazy. Like, I watched a guy draft like a pure return man, and I was looking at, like, the dude had 4 games on the entire season last year where he went over 15 fantasy points, and it was still under 25 fantasy points. So it wasn't like so game breaking that it won the week. And it's not like you would have been able to predict those 4 weeks out of 17. So it's like drafting dudes that are only kick returners is not worth it. It's really not. And then the bonus that it gives, it gives like a healthy little boost to guys that will do the returning. But I'm looking for guys that have the path to being the wide receiver before they are the return guy. And I'm totally in on Rashid Shaheed as he's the second target. And you mentioned Juwan Johnson, who unfortunately suffered an injury. He's not going to be available for the first part of the season. He may come in later on, but for at least that first chunk of the season, it's going to be Olave, and then it's going to be Shaheed, and then it's going to be good old Taysom Hill. But he's not like a true like receiving. So I really love Shaheed to even just get some more natural targets in the offense. The only other name I'll throw out just as a super deep dynasty stash, since we're on the Dynasty Pulse here. If you're in a deep enough league, I have Bub Means on a lot of my rosters.
Bub.
I just love the name. The name is amazing. Bub Means. But also he just has a path to at least being the wide receiver 3. Like, people are really in on A.T. Perry. I think he could be better than Perry. And we'll see. Maybe he's a little more well-rounded and more of a typical like possession guy where he allows Shaheed to be the wide receiver 3. And if he's able to move into the wide receiver 2 role, maybe he could do some things. So it's just, again, a very deep dynasty stash.
Well, A.T. Perry is he's a very large like red zone target. I mean, you can say wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's definitely going to be involved in some like early down red zone stuff as a blocker and as like a possible leak target. He's about 4 inches taller than Means. So they're not really corollary. So for Means to pass A.T. Perry on the depth chart, not even like it could happen so easily. I mean, all he has to do is just like outplay him in camp and everything. And A.T. Perry is pretty limited in his role, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, guys, we're about hour 10 in. You're giving us some. Yeah, it's a great show. Jack, You've been an awesome guest. Are you headed to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton in a couple weeks?
Yes, I am.
No kidding. Yes. Are you going to be hanging out at the FAN house for a bit? Are you going to come and see us?
Oh, of course. Those are my boys.
Yeah.
In fact, Tyler was messaging me before the show, being like, "Yo, when's a good time to connect on a call?" So he must want to burn my ear about something. But I actually just the article that I just dropped that I was referencing earlier, and I'm still working on because I went and crunched all the numbers today, and I might come out with like a secondary article just to kind of back up the first one. But yeah, running back disparity. Basically, just highlighting the idea that you should be hitting wide receivers late in best ball as opposed to trying to hit on running backs because it's easier to get value, especially in cumulative scoring leagues. But that was exclusive to Fantasy Football Advice Network. If I do articles, that's where they go.
He said doo-doo.
Yeah.
Is that Quebecois or something?
Yeah, that's Quebecois for François Legault.
We love it, Jack. Well, man, you're always a great guest on our show. You're welcome back whenever. We're definitely going to have you on at least before the season starts and during the season. We need your input and maybe have Hoove back on as well because we need to, actually get you with the Dukes off and get your point in there because he was very animated the other night. And I think the three of us sat back and let him have his time. But we're all Lad McConkey guys, so it was interesting to watch him just go off.
Well, shout out to my guy Hoove. I love Hoove.
Yeah,
me and Hoove both come from the school of pro wrestling fans, so sometimes it feels, I think, from an outside perspective, like we're throwing the Dukes and throwing down, but it's like I think we both know that we're good workers that know how to do business.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was awesome. It added a lot of elements to our show, so we really appreciate that, man.
The best part was that he could not let it go and just polls and
we
tweeting.
are still going back and forth on Twitter, by the way. I keep teasing him every now and again when he posts something, especially if he posts like a roster that he drafted or something. I'm like, it needs a little bit more Lad.
That's so good.
I love it. It's great. Well, Jack, tell everybody where they can find you, all your stuff, what you're working on and stuff before we wrap up today.
I think I should be okay this weekend to go up back with the lives, and then probably we'll hit some pre-records while I'm going through the move. And then obviously when I'll be down in Canton, I'm not doing anything for the show, so I'll just be dropping some pre-records. But when I get back, we're going to move back to the 3 a week, basically, for the fantasy show, which is going to be the big thing. But it all happens in the same great little shitty corner of the internet, which is the worst sports channel. There's 3 terrible shows that are on there. Shout out to Bone. Was very patient with me today because I sucked. I had a really sucky day in terms of like scheduling and things falling on me unexpectedly. So unfortunately, we had to reschedule our interview for next week. But I'm looking forward to doing that. That's the show that I really enjoy doing, guys. It's the worst interview. I get to interview all the other content creators in the space. They put up with me. Mike's been on the show before. It's a fun time. So if you're going to watch anything, you can Google, search in YouTube or wherever else. Literally just search my name, @Jack Lucenay. That's that simple.
Sweet, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Bigz?
Yeah. Well,
bring us home, buddy.
I just wanted to remind everybody to like and subscribe, share, hit the bell, all that stuff. We're trying to push subscribers on the Fantasy Football Plus network, as well as on the Undroppables. Look for a ton of great content coming out, including next week. You'll want to get notified for this one because we have Joe Kuvatakis coming on to talk about his best ball strategy, which I attempted to employ a little bit in the Scott Fish Bowl and got completely wiped out of any semblance of doing that. But it's called omni stacking, and it's something that you're going to want to hear about. He wrote a great article on the Undroppables about it, and he's going to be here to talk all about it. Additionally, and I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to get this scheduled, but we have a great guest coming on. His name is James D. Coe, and he just launched his own website.
Nice.
And we're going to have him explain all about that. He's part of the reception percent.
James is also my good personal friend, by the way, and
nice.
I consider a mentor in the biz. So shout out to him.
Yeah,
James is awesome. I can't wait.
New website that he launched, and so we're gonna schedule him. He wants to come on maybe next Thursday. We might not be on next Thursday, and then also for the expo. Guess who loves bringing a camera and being live? This guy. So there's going to be a ton of great content coming out in about a month from that. 3 weeks from now, we will all be shouting at Schultzy on the cameras.
We love you, Schultzy. We're you'll be there in heart. You'll be there in soul. You'll be there with us.
I'm sure I'll jump on a stream and try and wrangle you guys like I did at the live draft the other day.
You're gonna need to keep us in line. Like you're gonna be, your producer role is gonna be more important that week than ever before.
I have a breaking news update. I saw on Twitter, FF Ball Guru, who was in a lot of our mock drafts, said, "Show me your lineup and I'll critique it." And he said, "We did so many mocks together. It's cool to see the final product. Love your tight end depth, especially once Hawk is healthy. Quarterbacks are nice. I'm not huge on Zamir White. Well, you should be. But solid depth at the running back position. Got some solid return men as well. I'll go 8.75 out of 10. So suck it, Dynasty Data Labs." Thank you, FF Ball Guru 1 on Twitter at FF Ball Guru 1. Apparently,
he must have also had a really bad ranking on Dynasty Data Labs because, he likes your team that much.
He's bad in both rankings. Like, it just doesn't matter. That's why I'm not the rankings, bro. It's because, like, by the time it's week 4, all my rankings are going to be different when I've got 17 rookies on my team.
We love it. We love it. bigz, send us off, my buddy. That's you,
hey,
man.
Everybody. Like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, blah, blah, blah. Follow me at BigBoned FFB on Twitter, at FFCanuck99 on Twitter, at SCHU1TZY. That's Schultzy.
Schwanzy.
Check us out on the Undroppables. Check all our content out on playerprofiler.com. We are all employees, and the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. Look for Jersey Leagues. Go get your subscription. It's a free jersey if you win, or you can look at it this way. It's a $50 buy-in for our Jersey Leagues, and you get a full year subscription of FSAN for free. However you want to look at it, it's a great deal. And other than that, we hope you win.
We hope you win.
We hope you win.
We hope you win.